But you know what? When you and I take up this call and we talk about abortion, if we speak about it in church, we're told we're too political. If we speak about it in the political arena, we're told we're too religious. If we speak about it in the world of the media, it's too disturbing. In the world of business, it's too distracting. In the world of education, it's too controversial. In the streets, it's too disruptive. So abortion, if abortion is wrong, where do we go to say so? We go into the churches, we go into politics, into the media, into business, into education, and into the streets. Some churches haven't wanted to get involved in political hassles with the government, so they've been silent on abortion. They didn't want to get involved in hassles from the government. They didn't want to take the fight to the government. So now with the HHS mandate, the government took the fight to them. And when it comes to that mandate, we've got a simple message. We will obey God rather than them. As Alveda can tell us, her uncle said one day to the civil rights movement, we've got a lot of obstacles in our way, but we're not going to let anything turn us around. We're not going to let no dogs turn us around, no water hoses turn us around, no police clubs or jail sentences, and we're not going to let any injunctions turn us around. And so today I say to you, in the pro-life movement, no Planned Parenthood is going to turn us around. No biased media is going to turn us around. No HHS mandate is going to turn us around. No Obama administration is going to turn us around. We are marching for a certainty. And it's not only the certainty that we will arrive at the day of victory for the unborn, it is a certainty that the power which now dismembers them and crushes them and throws them in the garbage is a power which at its roots has already been defeated.
Well, I'll tell you, Father Frank, it's amazing that we're actually sharing the stage with you. When Jason and I were kids, we met you in 1988.
Yes.
You look the exact same. He's got the same hair, the same glasses, and the same outfit. In 1991, that was the height of abortion. It was 2,197 freestanding abortion clinics in America. Today, thanks to the work of Priests for Life and other organizations and Christians and Catholics joining hands and uniting for life, there are less than 600 freestanding abortion clinics in America.
Hello, this is Janet Morana, Executive Director of Priests for Life. And I'm coming to you live here in Orlando, Florida. I'm at the Dolphin Hotel where we are participating, our ministry is participating in the CareNet conference. CareNet is one of the largest umbrellas of pregnancy centers, and they come here for these conferences once a year to get better educated, to see the latest things that are available for pregnancy centers. And of course, Priests for Life, we're an exhibitor here. This also is a special day today. It's September 11th. And so for people's questions today, I'm going to not answer any questions about abortion per se or politics. Today, I'd like us to remember September 11th. And if you have a question about that or something you want to share, that's what I would like to see today. Well, first of all, I'm a native New Yorker. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. Later moved to Staten Island, where our Priest for Life headquarters was. And on September 11th, I was gathered at our Priest for Life headquarters on Staten Island, where our entire pastoral team was there. We were scheduled to have meetings. And we were at our morning briefing. And there's windows to this conference room. And the sky that morning was beautiful azure blue, clear, not a cloud in the sky. And I spoke to my daughter, who's up in Staten Island today, and she said, Mom, the sky is the same as it was that day, exactly the same. And so we were having our meeting, and one of our priests came in, and he said, I just heard that a small twin-engine plane hit the World Trade Center. And I said, Father Peter, that's impossible. It's clear, the sky's clear as a bell. And besides, planes normally don't fly that close to the skyscrapers in New York. He says, well, I don't know. So we all scrambled, to see what was going on. And very shortly, we heard that it was not a twin-engine plane, but in fact, it was a big jetliner. So at the time, right after September 11th, a lot of videos came out with footage and pictures. And I went into our archives, and I'd like to play right now. And I'm going to comment as we watch this together and we remember the over 3,000 people that died at the World Trade Center, people who were stuck in that building and couldn't get out, first responders who rushed in to save people. And when that building collapsed, they died with them too. And one of the very first people to die on September 11th was a priest. His name was Father Judge, and he was a Franciscan. And his church was very nearby World Trade Center. And he was there giving last rites to somebody when the towers collapsed. So he was crushed too and killed. So let's take a look at these video pictures right now. And of course, there's the towers. When I was a little girl, I remember watching, when I was much younger, watching these towers go up. These are the pictures of some of the people that died that day on the plane. They're going to show you which plane it was. And of course, they did have the September 11th ceremony. If you saw it on TV this morning, if you watch your news programs tonight, you'll probably see replays of it. And unfortunately, they didn't want to let the families all come together and read the names because of COVID. So Tunnels to Towers allowed that piece to happen. Thank God for them. And here's some more pictures. Some of the people that perished didn't have a chance to get out. Like the people who worked for a company called, this is the United Airlines flights 175, people who perished on that plane. But on the 105th floor, there was a company called Cantor Fitzgerald. And obviously they were on the 105th floor of the tower. And that entire company was wiped out. Executives, they were a finance company, and everybody perished. On September 11th, it was very strange as things unfolded. because first we heard about the first plane, then another plane shortly after, and then shortly after that, one tower collapsed, and then the second tower. And then around that same time, we heard about the plane hitting the Pentagon, and then we heard about the plane in Shanksville. And it became very apparent that America was under attack. And being in New York, I can tell you, there was a period of time that entire day where everybody in my office, most of us knew someone who worked at the World Trade Center. And so everybody tried to contact someone and see, are they okay? Did they get out? And so on. So there was a period of time where we just were waiting and waiting and waiting. And I remember that later that evening, early afternoon, some of us were waiting to hear from people. And a friend of ours who worked there just walked into our office, and it was like seeing someone came back from the dead. Oh, now we're seeing Let It Roll. This is Todd Beamer. He was on the plane that those passengers took control back of the plane over the terrorists, and it crashed in Shanksville. And we know that that plane was headed for Washington, D.C., and they were going to, the plan was that plane was going to crash into the Capitol. Those were real heroes. And he spoke to his wife right before that plane crashed, and that's when he said to everyone on the plane, "Okay, guys, let's roll." Real heroes. If you didn't see on the news this morning, what happened was so memorable because Vice President Trump and Joe Biden both attended the Ground Zero ceremonies in New York. You know, today was a day where we put politics aside. And in fact, if you're looking at TV, you're also getting a break from political commercials, which is kind of nice in a way. If someone just commented, yes, there were actually two planes hit, one hit each of the towers in New York. There were actually four planes and three buildings. Okay, so the two buildings in the World Trade Center, North and South Tower, were each hit by a plane. And then there was the plane, that's three, then the third plane was the plane that hit the Pentagon. And the fourth plane was the plane that Todd Beamer and the passengers helped bring down over in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And that was the fourth plane that was headed for another building. And that plane was headed for the Capitol. It's what we found out from later intelligence. So in fact, there was four planes and three buildings destroyed, damaged. Well, the World Trade Center came down and was totally destroyed. And then from our office, when you looked out the window, you could see the smoke rising from Manhattan. And the smoke started that day, it was black, as black could be. And then later, about a week later, it turned to a dark gray, then a light gray, then eventually white. But it took almost a whole month for that smoldering to keep happening and the smoke to keep going up. I mean, you're seeing a lot of pictures here of people who are escaping and all the ash and debris that was there that day. We knew people who made their way down to the Staten Island ferry. They walked from where the World Trade Center was down to the Staten Island ferry, and some people accidentally fell into the river because of the dense smoke and smog and ash that was falling. They couldn't even see where the entrance was. And some people accidentally fell into the Hudson River, and they had to be rescued. And then, of course, first responders was, practically one whole engine company. The entire company was lost because they were the first fire engine to arrive and went up into the building. And they all perished, as we know, when the building collapsed. And then I don't know how many of you remember that immediately following September 11th, there was a real spirit in our country where everyone came together. Everybody. It was beautiful. There was such patriotism. Everybody, flags were flown all over. People, we even had them on our cars, those little things that click on the window. At Priest for Life, we had pictures of flags in every window. I mean, people were proud to be American. There was a spirit that we captured. You know, the churches were full. It just went on for weeks and weeks and weeks. But like everything else, eventually, unfortunately, people got back to business as usual, and they went back to their lives, and the flags came down, and the church began to go back to normal capacity. It's very sad that we have such short-term memory, but we should never forget. Some of your comments. Oh boy, I'm out here on a balcony, and we're getting a little bit of a sprinkle. And this is typical Florida afternoon showers. I'm going to have to try to step in here and keep talking to you. And if it gets too dark, I'm sorry, but we have to move indoors now off the balcony because of the weather. All right, there we go. Just look at these images. You know, for days and weeks after this, people who were still waiting for loved ones, hoping and praying they would be found in a hospital, or as they were going through the rubble, they were looking for survivors. And people would walk around Manhattan, and there's a church very nearby, St. Paul's Church, and they have a beautiful wrought iron fence around the whole grounds, and people were taping up pictures of their loved ones, and it just had the picture saying missing. So there was a real sense of hoping and praying against hope that they would be found. And of course, at a certain point, instead of a rescue mission, they knew in fact it would just be a recovery mission. And I can tell you that you can read what this is saying. As ordinary people prepared for their workday, fearless cow attacked New York City, where I've lived my entire life. They crashed hijacked commercial jetliners into two towers that compromised the World Trade Center, killing all on board. Hundreds of emergency personnel and thousands of innocent fellow New Yorkers and Americans who had done nothing to these cowards. 8,000 elementary children attended schools in the shadow of the Twin Towers, and they had to be emergency evacuated. So, I mean, this is a day to remember. So, I just wanted us to reflect and remember. I'm going to take any questions. If anyone has a question about September 11th, I'd love to see your questions. All right. And I'll take those questions. But I'll tell you some of the things that happened immediately following. As the churches had to figure out a whole new way. Well, how are we going to deal with this? Because now, after a certain week or so, people realized my loved one's not coming home. And as they recovered remains of people, there was morgues set up all over, emergency morgues all over New York City. And as they identified people, then they would contact the family. And at a certain point, some people knew that they weren't going to get remains back. For those who got remains, yes, they had funerals. And, you know, on Staten Island, where I live, it just seemed every day in our neighborhood, on my way to work or out for an errand, I would see another funeral and another funeral and another funeral. And the ones for the firemen and the first responders were so sad, so sad. They would have, I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of firemen in their dress uniforms, and the ladder flag with the flag, and then the engine thing, which is where they would put the cats. And those burials continued for about a month at least, is how those funerals went. Got point where some people realized there were no remains for them to have. They couldn't find them. They would almost, from that explosion, disintegrated their remains. And so the churches had, uh, they would have a reception in their auditorium for the family, and they would put up all kinds of pictures, and they would have a funeral mass without the remains of the person there, no burial, no place to go, and the family would be received in the church auditorium. And that went on for another months and months and months. It was a very long period of time that this happened. And like I said, unless you were living in New York, you kind of heard about September 11th, you saw it on TV. But in New York, we lived it for months and months and months and months and months. It was a horrible feeling. Everybody knew somebody who died. Everybody knew a family that was affected. You know, I saw her on Fox News this morning, Judge Janine Pirro. She, at the time, was working in the district attorney's office, I believe. And she lived up in Westchester County, where in the same town where a lot of the people that worked for Kenneth Fitzgerald worked, the company that I told you perished on the 105th floor. And these people, to get to work, they would drive to the train and park their cars in this big municipal lot and get on the train to work. And she said that the cars just sat there and sat there because those people never came home. Some people didn't even have a family member that could even claim that car. But those cars sat there for a very long time until eventually they had to be removed and towed. So there were all these little reminders around New York that life had drastically changed forever. It was never going to go back. I remember the very next day, I was driving on Staten Island on an errand from our office. And I got to the store and it was closed, yet I could see people inside and the lights on. And what happened was there was a lockdown on Staten Island because they thought the terrorists had escaped to our borough. And the whole borough was locked down. So I got safely back to our office. But these are the kind of little things that were happening in those days immediately following that, unless you were there. And the other strange thing was we didn't hear a plane in the sky for days. Now, you live in New York City, you hear lots of planes constantly, especially at our office in Staten Island because we're pretty close to Newark Airport. And so we would hear planes all the time. It was very eerie. Not a plane in the sky. Nothing did you hear. Until I remember by the fourth, I think it was the fourth or fifth day, suddenly we saw our first plane. And we looked up, look, it's a plane. It was like a sign that, oh, maybe we're getting back to normal. So, on this day of September 11th, I really hope that everyone is reflecting more on the lessons of September 11th. What are those lessons? What happened to that patriotism that was burning in everyone's heart after that? We were attacked, and yet we stuck together. On September 11th, it didn't matter, Republican or Democrat. It didn't matter. We were all Americans, and we were going to fight together this enemy that attacked our people on our ground. I mean, when you think about it, since Pearl Harbor, this was the very first time an attack of this scope and magnitude happened on American soil. And I've been to Pearl Harbor myself, and it's very emotional to stand there. And I stood at that memorial where they have the names of all the soldiers on the wall there. And I stood there as long as it took, and I read every soldier's name that died, and I just said a simple phrase, Lord, let they rest in peace. And when you go to see the USS Arizona, it's so strange. You still see oil bubbling up from that ship, that battleship that's been down there for all these decades. So like with September 11th, we don't have an Arizona sitting in the harbor, but we now have the Freedom Towers up. And if you've ever been to New York, where the two towers stood, there's a beautiful wall around. Okay, each perimeter of where each tower was, and it's kind of like called an endless fountain where the water goes down into where the the towers were first coming up from. And all the names of the people that perished that day are on a plaque that runs around the whole perimeter. And here, for us who are pro-life, we're going to like this fact. There were 4 women who were pregnant. And on the plaque, it says their name, and it says, and her unborn child. Amazing. Then everyone could acknowledge that 4 unborn children also perished. Okay, here someone's writing me. Jonathan Jackson says, hello from Birmingham, Alabama. Being taken out of daycare early by my mom on September 11th is one of my earliest childhood memories. Yeah, I know. Wasn't that strange? Like suddenly everyone was picking their kids up from school or daycare, and everyone just had to go home to the safety of their own home. Thank you, Jonathan, for that question. For that comment. So I think tonight, as we reflect, and maybe you'll watch some more coverage on TV tonight, I think we need to reflect on that we need to get back that American spirit, that sense of patriotism. After September 11th, nobody would have taken a knee to the national anthem, ever, ever. We were waving proudly our American flag. And also, too, internationally, at Priest Life, we saved another video, which I can't show you now, but it showed all countries all over the world were bringing flowers and setting up candles at the American embassies in their country and expressing their sorrow for what America was going through. So I just hope that a time like this, you will also reflect and say, am I proud to be an American, which I think we should be. We live in one of the greatest countries of the world. And if you don't have an American flag flying outside your home, maybe now's the time to go get one this weekend. Go buy a flag and proudly fly it outside your home. I have one outside my home always. And, reflect on, are we proud to be Americans? And I think we should be. And of course, tomorrow, we'll be back dealing with the election. But today it was nice to see everyone press a pause button. A pause button. There were no political commercials on TV today. Did you notice that? We got a break. And today, it was nice to see Pence and Biden together at the ceremony. Because just for today, we were able to step aside and not think about the election. And here Lisa's commenting, Lisa Katana Foster, thank you for this reflection. My husband, FDNY, his life was spared through a schedule change. God keep all our brothers and sisters and fellow Americans. Yeah, Lisa. There's so many stories like that, Lisa. Like your husband had a schedule change. And a friend of mine, her husband worked as an electrician in the electricians union, and he had been working at the World Trade Center in 1993 when they had in the garage that car bombing. So that day he was down there because where that van went with that car bomb that exploded, that's where they would go to their lockers and get their lunch. Well, he had just gotten down there, got his lunch, and even though that one happened in the cold weather, he said, it's too stuffy here. I'm going to go outside and have my lunch outside. He just got outside and that bomb went off. Well, he was also there on September 11th. And again, at work, he had just gone down to their lockers. It was in the morning early. And they got their assignments. And his assignment was to come out from under the World Trade Center and go across to 7 World Trade Center, a different building. And he just about got outside and the first plane hit. And his wife said, okay, honey, his name is Jimmy Rayo. Not once, but twice. We're not waiting for third time to retire. And pretty soon after that, he decided, okay, I guess I'll retire now. But there were a lot of people that had a schedule change that was supposed to be there. I know someone who was scheduled to be at a board meeting at it was called Windows of the World. It was a restaurant at the very top of the Trade Center. It was a beautiful restaurant. And there was supposed to be a board meeting that morning, and he couldn't get there. He was flying in from California the day before. His flight got canceled, He missed the board meeting, but his life was spared. And there are a lot of people like that who just fate had it. That's their schedule got changed or something changed, and they weren't where they were supposed to be, and therefore their life was spared. And at Priest for Life, one of our employees who works with us, she worked at the World Trade Center. She was in management then, and she led her entire company down the steps and out. And what happened was that morning, in one of the towers, initially when the first plane hit, an alarm went off that everyone should evacuate. And in this other tower, when the second plane hit, they also said evacuate. But that going back to the first tower, they said, "Oh, it seems it's okay. You can go back now." But my friend that works at Priest for Life, she said, "No, there's something wrong. We're going to go out. We're going to walk down." They walked down like 40 stories down. Imagine 40 leading people, hot. Those stairwells are dark and dingy, and they got safely out before the building collapsed. So again, I hope that you reflect on this day in a nice way. And like I said, let's all make sure people are going back to church now more than ever before, and also proud to be Americans. Like I said, it saddened me to see several months later when the churches started emptying out again. So Tim Trainer's writing was amazing how that church across the street was spared. Yes, that's right, Tim. And they call it the little church. It's St. Paul's Church. It is a small little church, and it is so close to Ground Zero that you're right, Tim. It's just mind-boggling how that church nothing was damaged in that church. Amazing, no windows broken, nothing. In fact, that church was used for the rescuers. The whole church was taken over, basically. Of course, they let them do that, to be used as a place where the rescuers could be very close to where it was. And now at that church, you can go there, and they have a section of it all set up like a little bit of a museum. And you can see some of the artifacts and the things from September 11th. And in fact, if you go to we call Ground Zero, in addition to seeing that fountain with the wall with the names, there's now a museum there. And I've been through it. I've taken people there. It's very impactful. It's very emotional. There's one room where they have a picture of every person that perished at the World Trade Center. And there's somber music playing and all that. They actually have physically there one of the fire engines that was practically crushed and damaged. They have where you're hearing cell phone messages. So many people called a loved one figuring, I'm dying, I can't get out because I'm above the fire. There's no way down for me. And they play this recording where you hear these cell phone messages. There's all kinds of pictures and memories from that day. And it's worth a visit. If you come to New York City for, some people go there to tour different things. I think everybody should make it to Ground Zero and see for themselves. Like I said, especially for those of us pro-lifers, just to see those names of those women and her unborn child is quite amazing. So I think that's all for now. I think my sentiment is just God bless America, and let's just pray for all those who perished and their families. So many children, grew up without a mom or a dad, and we need to pray for those children. Okay, and so this is Janet Morana, the Executive Director of Priest for Life, saying goodbye. Thanks for joining us today, and tune in again next week when we have a lot of more programming for you. God bless.